Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the.
Sorry.
All right, there you go. I'll try that again. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the February 8th, 2024 Landmarks Commission meeting. It's nice to see everyone in person and virtually. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal from any case due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the records prior to the beginning of the presentation. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, virtual attendants will use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. The proper channels for comments are sending an email to landmark@clevelandohio.gov email address with a comment or a letter, calling and or leaving a message at 216-664-2532, sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall located at 601 Lakeside Avenue, Suite 519. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received during the stated deadlines are collected by Landmark staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting.
All right. To go over the meeting rules and procedures, the chair will call each agenda item and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize Design Review Committee recommendations and any public comments received. The deadline for public comment is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to commission members prior to the meeting. Staff will identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
We'll now call the February 8th, 2024 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Dreyer?
Here.
Mr. Dulick?
Here.
Councilmember Gray? Director Wong?
Here.
Mr. Lozier?
Here.
Mr. Sandberry?
Here.
Mr. Strickland?
Here.
Mr. Krosick?
Here.
Dr. Williams?
Here.
And Ms. Trott?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have quorum. In addition to the commission members, we have Kevin Roberts, our representative from the Law Department, as well as Jessica Beam, Carl Brunges, and myself from Landmark staff.
Excellent. Well, then we will begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'll begin with our first applicant located at 5817 Detroit Avenue, revisions to renovation. This project needs to be untabled before we can proceed. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to untable.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second. Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please follow.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trosick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trapp.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion to untable passes unanimously.
All right, we'd like to welcome the applicant. If you'd like to unmute your mic, announce yourself and tell us about your project or revisions to your project since we last saw it.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me online?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Brian Jarosek. I'm representing Mark Demchuk. And prior, we had 3 points that needed to be addressed with the front facade of the building pertaining to as-built, and then what was originally submitted back, I believe, in 2019. Also, this prior Monday, we had a meeting with zoning to clarify the rear part of the structure where a carport deck and roof above that second-story deck was added. So it was requested at that time that we have a more detailed site plan with some measurements and setbacks, which I have updated and included with this latest package. Another thing I did is the sheet that you're looking at now. I have the as-built, and then I also did a Photoshop rendering. What was suggested that we do to remove the 4 doors up top, go back to a two panel door up top, and we pushed the 2 center on the first floor, the double windows. We closed up the center support in between to make it more like the original drawing. So in the Photoshop rendering, I did that and showed on that photo that what it'll eventually look like. So there was also a question about the roof up above on the front facade. I was in contact with Mark and was under the assumption that that was okay, but that's where we stand at this point.
All right, thank you for that review of what the revisions you've made in the last 2 weeks. Any need for, there's no desire to hear anything, so we can go right to opening up the floor to the commission for questions and comments.
We do have a staff report.
Oh, I'm sorry, staff report, sorry.
Okay, staff report. Thank you, Madam Chair. Last time we were here, we were asked for a full accounting and timeline. So I went back, and since I've been involved in this since the previous owners, I went back and found every email and all contacts. So the commission needs to understand everything that has gone on with this property since that time. So the original contact for this property, and as it looked in 2019, was with the previous developer. We had made initial contact, but then told that the project was on hold because they needed to have more money for what they were doing, that it was beyond what they thought it was going to be initially. And then eventually it went back on the market. There is still a video on YouTube from Keller Williams that shows this property for sale in 2021. And there was no mention that this is in the historic district. And there was also a quote saying that there's an opportunity to build out a walk-on deck in their advertisement. So a permit was applied for in March of 2021 after the sale, and that was voided out for whichever reason. It was no longer valid. And then another application came in for the second floor renovation. This is in June of 2021. And the plans were approved. However, it didn't identify that there were exterior changes for some small things on there, like the roof valleys and such. and this permit was never routed to landmarks. There was an email from the contractor, Joe Gallo, to Ohio City noting that hey, we've acquired this property and we're working on the elevations in October of 2021. On October 29th, a private citizen sent a complaint to Building and Housing that the work was being done without permits. This was found that because there was that permit on the record previously, the inspector said, no, they're doing the work, they have a permit, etc. That same day, or same day, we received an email from Jessica Trevisano, who at the time was working at Northwest Neighborhoods, who had contact with Mr. Demchuk, stating that we've discussed this, you need to go through the design review process, you're not supposed to be doing any work until you get a permit. Giving the schedule and how to get on that schedule. At that time, she was the coordinator for that design review committee. In the email from the chief inspector to the citizen in response, said the window was open to help with access to the roof repairs. They do intend to install a deck, and they are preparing a permit application for that work. And they indicated they will not proceed until a permit is approved. And if they cannot get approval, they will return the window to its original location. And here's the work that was being done at the time with the addition in the back that was not described in the original permit. That same citizen kept up with the plans and sent in another email on 11/23/2021 noting that they still do not have a building permit and they are continuing with alterations. And he has stated that the property owner has ignored the rules of the local landmark district. And he asked again for an inspector to go out and flag for a violation. The next day, they came in and applied for a building permit. That one was denied eventually because it became a duplicate. It was only for siding, windows, etc. So instead, they applied for a secondary permit a week later, which was the one that we pulled through our design review process. And with that, the top rendering is what was originally seen by the local committee. The local committee saw this in January, late January, on December 22nd. And they asked for it to be tabled. They questioned if it was appropriate or feasible with the front deck especially. They didn't like the extended roof. They struggled with the compatibility with the adjacent context and the historic district. They had concerns of safety with regards to the proximity of the overhead wires. And they felt that meeting halfway did not do anybody any favors, as it doesn't align to any architectural feature and not fitting in the context of the district. So they tabled the project pending the study of moving the front deck railing back, making the opening of the second floor deck entrance more closely aligned with the existing opening, studying the roof projection, and other items such as submitting measured drawings and other like that. It went back to the local design review committee on January 26th, 2022. And while there was some disagreement in the modern railing system, they understood the position of the one person who said it's a little too modern, but this was, the bottom one was what was ultimately recommended for approval. This came to the Cleveland Landmarks Commission on February 10th. There was a motion to approve with a few conditions, like reducing number of brackets and such like that. The motion to approve tied at 4-4, therefore it failed. They came back on March 10th, 2022 with the revised, and that's on the bottom, and the motion to approve as presented passed. And show what the difference was, again, on that front elevation. The applicants applied for a waterproofing permit, which is something that we do administratively because it's below grade and doesn't have an effect. They never picked up that permit. It is still pending issuance. At this point, it's void. We sent an email to the plans examiner knowing there's been changes to the submitted plans on the building permit. The plans examiner sent a letter requesting revised plans. And then there was an email exchange with myself and Mr. Gallo, who's the former contractor here, and I said to them, final plans need to reflect those changes that came about as a part of the design review process. I had another email saying that the basement wall was caving in. We advised him he needs another permit. There was no additional permit for that. Then a few months later, I got an email from Mr. Demchuk saying that he asked to reply to change the materials for the windows, saying that it's going to take 26 weeks to obtain and it's 4 times the cost. My response that same day, because I was going on vacation and didn't want to leave him hanging for a week, was that we approved this on March 10th, and why weren't the windows ordered at that point? No new revised plans have been submitted, and that they need to supply those plans to Landmark staff and to the plans examiner, and then submit all the alternative information for the windows. Landmark staff never received those plans. Those plans did go to the plans examiner. However, the plans reflected the original plan and not the revised ones. We found out later. This was scheduled for Board of Zoning Appeals on April 10th, 2023. These photos of them doing the work without permits was taken the week before as per BZA standard process. And they no-showed. Therefore, that BZA, they never received any of the variances they technically needed at that time. And that has been discarded. So that entire permit is no longer valid at all. Hence why they have a new permit. But you can also see where they're putting in the windows into the space in the front. The new application was applied for on 9/13/2023. The work was completed without the permits, and they were requesting retroactive approvals and the revisions to the approved plans by the Landmark Commission. So this did not go back to the local committee, just as a matter of process. There was another complaint on this same date saying that no work has been done and there was exposed plywood. The inspector noted that the complaint was not valid, that permits are active for the property. So what we have here is some of the side-by-side comparisons as to what was approved by the Landmarks Commission versus what is being submitted now. It was difficult looking at these plans because none of them really matched what was saying was going on. Landmark staff at the last meeting stated we would go out and take pictures so we could see what the current conditions are. This is at the end of last month. You can see the front window. That's the one that's the main contention here. Here we have some odd measurements. Some stuff doesn't match or line up as part of their application. So we'd like some more clarification as to actual dimensions and such. And then we felt that it should be in context to the other houses next to it. This house in particular probably was a mirror of the one next to it, the green one originally with its detailing. The other one on the end, it probably both mirrored the one on the end, which has more of its original detailing as well, because they're probably all built at about the same time. We understand that the storefront was added much later than originally thought. It was added in the 50s. So I think we should, staff recommendation is that the primary facade be returned to what was originally approved. And I think we need to have more clarification of the materials that were used for the siding, the windows, etc. Because we're not sure at this point what was done. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brunges. We will then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off? Don't have my computer, but Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the roof extension over the deck with the lower slope gable dramatically alters the appearance of the structure. And that was not part of the original approval. And I think that that should be removed. And I agree with the staff recommendation that the applicant needs to document the materials that they have used on the balance of the project to make sure that we know exactly what's being installed there. But the first floor grouping of windows should be installed per the approved drawings. And the double doors on top should be installed, and that roof extension, in my opinion, should be removed, and the two brackets be added. Basically go back to the approved drawings from 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other questions and comments from the commission?
Well, I want to thank the staff for doing all the hard work of going through all the communications and bringing out the receipts. That's, I mean, I think my comments are just in general, as you know, city official, that we have a baseline expectation that all measurements are accurate, that the permits are submitted correctly, and that we're following the work, because Cleveland deserves to have good housing and building stock, and that those are at least the baseline expectation there. So, you know, I agree with the assessment that this should be returned to the March 2022, I believe, approval by Landmarks Commission, and that the applicant should proceed with those designs. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wong. I guess I echo, you know, the what has been stated so far also. I mean, this has been a long, drawn-out process, and we understand, you know, there has been changes in ownership, but we do have the standards and expect when we're submitted things that it's actually going to be what the work will align with. So I agree that the front elevation should return to what was approved in March 2022, which would require the removal of the second floor overhang and the rework of the second floor doors to, you know, what size and scale of what was originally submitted.
Madam Chair, there is one positive change that they made, but it's going to have to be worked. The railings that they used are more appropriate than what was approved originally. However, it should be set back at least a foot from, that should be more aligned as a safety issue because of the overhead wires. So they used a more appropriate railing versus the vertical. I think that's the only change on that front that I think we would advise to keep.
So returning to what was approved in March of 2022 with the exception of the railing, that could be the more, the configuration that was submitted in 2023. Okay. Yes, Michelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to submit that we include the brackets that are not there because of the porch overhang, so the brackets that were approved for the top gable, that they include that in their renovation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lozier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In addition to the brackets, I believe that there is also the fascia board that was discussed in previous meetings as well, the decorative fascia that you could see in the two houses next door. My assumption is that when the porch roof was added, they removed those decorative, that decorative fascia board. So I would request that the fascia board be recreated in the same design as what's reflected in the houses next door as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lozier.
I'm sure if I may, I just want to, the front windows on the first floor, that, you know, they installed the windows that came up with the last time. They're proposing now to essentially push those closer together, brick in around them, and then that all gets painted. Are the commission members comfortable with that, or do you want it to go back to the original approved full-size windows having to replace the windows that are installed? I just want to have as much clarity as possible.
I personally feel the windows need to fill the opening. and not introduce secondary brick at this point. So if we're going to modify this elevation, then I feel it should be modified to align with what was submitted and approved in March of 2022. Mr. Lozier, I saw your hand up, and then did it go back down?
No, I'm still active. I want to just say that I agree with your comment that the existing windows, the windows that were installed should be replaced with windows as approved that fill the entirety of the opening with the approval in 2022.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would also like to add, I fully support everything that's already been said. But I would also add that I believe the board is okay with all the changes that were made on the other elevations.
Great point. So last time we discussed this, or the time before, we discussed that the revisions to the sides, to the window openings and the rear for the overhang were acceptable, but the front elevation has been the main focus.
Since I don't believe that's been officially voted on.
Mr. Strickland?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to reinforce that replacement of those front windows. I believe that the drawings approved in March of 22 showed a transom panel at the head of each of those windows. So the replacement should include that transom panel as well. And can we verify that the decorative fascia board did exist on this house prior to adding that extension over the porch?
It did. I don't know if we have a good image of it, but maybe, yeah, there you can kind of see it.
Okay, so I agree with the comment that should be replaced or replicated so that it returns to the original detailing. Thank you.
All right, hearing for fairly aligned consensus, would someone like to make a motion? Would someone like to make a motion, or does someone have a question, comments? Mr. Strickland?
All right, thanks, Madam Chair. I'll take a stab at this. So the motion would be to reject the project as submitted as a modification to the as-built conditions and a stipulation that the construction that's in place be removed and that the reinstall should be in conformance with the plans that were approved in March of 2022, with the exception of the handrail could be accepted if it's reset to a more safe condition, and that the modifications on the sides and then the rear be accepted as constructed. Did I capture everything?
Materials.
Oh, and then with the clarification to confirmation of materials.
Right. And adding the brackets back in at the soffit that was part of the original approval.
And
Brackets and fascia.
Right, and rebuilding the fascia, right.
All right, I'm not going to try to repeat that one. So there's a motion to reject with the condition to return to meet what was stated.
I don't know that there's a, Bob, I don't think you had them returning. It was just, well, yeah, to return to the previously approved drawings. So basically rejecting the alterations to the previously approved drawings.
Correct.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Sandberry. Any further discussion?
Mr.
Mr. Lozier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make sure that this motion is explicitly clear to the applicant, as it seems like there's been still some questions related to the specifics of what is being asked of him. So I may request that we are specific we note specifically the conditions that need to be remedied. So removal of the porch roof, removal of the 4 doors on the 2nd floor, replacing them with doors that are in scale and size to what was originally approved, removal of the existing windows on the 1st floor, front elevation, storefront, to fill the entirety of the opening with the transoms as submitted and approved in 2022, replacement of the original brackets, replacement of the brackets, the originals I'm assuming don't exist anymore, but replication of those brackets and reinstallation, as well as installation of new replicated fascia that was likely removed. And as Mr. Strickland had noted, adjusting the setback of the railing to a more safe dimension at the roof deck.
Thank you for that clarification. Does the applicant have any questions? Is that clear?
Yes, it is. So you're saying the upper deck level railing, the parallel to Detroit Avenue be moved back 12 inches, is that correct?
I believe
If that was previously approved.
Yeah,
If
whatever.
that was the previous approved dimension, then
Yeah.
yes.
Looks like it's
There
on.
is a dimension on your drawing that unfortunately I can't read on the
It
screen.
looks like a 7.
So we would match what was previously approved in 2022.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, the materials, when I got involved, I myself, designer draftsman, got involved with the stage where it was kind of halfway through the project to designate the windows and the sizes, and at that time that they were to be metal framed windows to be compliant with the historical era. And so they are metal framed windows. The siding.
Sir, if you don't
Yeah.
mind, we need it probably in a written form noted on the drawings for our official record. So I appreciate you going through it right now, but
Okay.
it would be better if you could provide us written documentation or documented on the drawings versus verbally. Yeah.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
we can. Yep.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just want to note that the variance ought to be sought too for the back porch, back addition, and that'll be its own separate process, but we want to ensure that that happens.
That was at BZA on this past
Oh, it
Monday,
was
and it got,
Okay.
conditional
understood.
approval pending
Pending
landmarks
this.
approval.
Okay, all good, thank you.
All right, then Mr. Russin, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trapp.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
If you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to staff after the meeting. We'll then move on to our next applicant located at 6614 West Clinton Avenue Down, window replacement. This project was previously tabled at our last meeting. We do need a motion to untable.
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Unpaid.
Thank you, Mr. Gulick. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trassick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Great. We'd like to welcome the applicant to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about the project revisions that you've put together since our last presentation.
All right, everybody. My name is Kyle Skinner. We're talking about the 6614 West Clinton. I was here last week talking about the downstairs window replacement. I'll kind of circle back to that. So what happened? We started working on this project probably a couple months ago. Kind of we were ignorant to the permitting, the design review, the landmarks. We didn't go about it in the right way. We were just unsure how to do it. We didn't know that that was a thing. So we replaced all the upstairs windows on the project. We did it with the same exact windows that we're proposing today. We also added some additional trim pieces to the exterior of the front of the property. There's pictures in this presentation of all the work that we did, the front of the house, the trim pieces, all that stuff. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of the work that we did do already without coming to you guys. So what we are presenting now is to do the same exact thing on the downstairs windows. All the windows in the property are, deplorable. We couldn't use them. They wouldn't open. They were just old, neglected windows. What we're proposing is to replace them with the same windows that are upstairs, which is a vinyl core window with a laminated fiberglass clad on the exterior of them, and that is black. So you can see in that picture, that's the existing window conditions of the downstairs unit. They're just terrible, quite honestly. So a couple changes we made from last time I was here. We are keeping the front cottage windows, which was recommended. The only thing I am asking with those is, if you look at the front of the house, there's a picture of it. The window on the right is 54 inches wide. The window on the left is 57 inches wide. I'm trying to make those the same size so I can get two 54-inch windows to match. With the style window that I'm trying to get, I can't get a window bigger than the 54 inches. So what I'm proposing to do is make those both 54 inches. I will wrap those in a 3.5-inch trim, like piece of wood, wrap it in the aluminum wrapping, kind of to match the rest of the windows that are on the upstairs of the house. And then obviously everything needs painted. We haven't gotten around to do that. Plan is we're going to paint it to match right now, just because painting the whole house is a big project right now. We just don't have the funding for that. So that's kind of what we're doing with that. Front door, we want to keep the front door and that round window that's underneath the porch. We just kind of want to make those, bring it back to the original, style of it. Strip the paint, kind of get that wood original look. We'll replace the glass in probably the round window and the front door, just a normal clear glass. That's about it as far as the windows. You can see the two windows right there. Just wrapping it in the kind of heavier trim to kind of dance it up, make it look nice again. Let's see. Yeah, quick sketch. What we'd like to do is kind of redo that front porch. The front siding that's kind of wrapping around the porch, acting as the railing, isn't the best looking. And if you take a look at the front of the house, the left side of that porch is sagging pretty drastically. So what we'd like to do is kind of tear off that aluminum siding on the front of the house, on the bottom half of it underneath the porch, replace that with a cement board, and then do a more appropriate style railing around there. At the end of this presentation, we found a house. It's kind of similar style, similar era. It has the banisters, just the round posts. We'd like to do something like that on the front of the house. Level the porch off, redo all the wood deck boards, and just make it a functional, safe porch again. And then long term, we'd like to paint the entire house, remove all the cable lines, get the trim pieces, painted to match currently. We'll do new, gutters, downspouts, all that stuff if we, in the future, make it look a little better. And I think that's about it for this house.
All right, thank you for the updated presentation. We'll then move on to landmark staff recommendations.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. This project was tabled at our last meeting to give the applicant the opportunity to give us a full picture of the full scope of work he intends to carry out on this property. He's here today only seeking approval of the proposed windows, which staff recommends approval. The other work, like the porch restoration and any other changes to the siding, will be reviewed and evaluated when those plans are finalized and ready to move forward. So while we welcome comments on the full scope from the commission and appreciate the applicant giving us the full picture of his plans, I just want to be clear that the only item we're acting on today is the installation of the windows on the first floor. Again, the applicant is maintaining the configuration of the windows, including the cottage sash on the front elevation, so staff is in support of the proposal today. Just regarding those two larger windows in the front, Mr. Skinner and I discussed that and sort of the unavailability of cottage style sash wider than 54 inches. And my feeling is, given the fact that the casings are jumped and he's adding trim back, if you lose 1.5 inches on each side, by the time you cut back the aluminum siding and install the trim, it'll look natural. So I don't see any issues with that, and that seems like an appropriate way to handle it to me.
Awesome, thank you. Any clarification needed on the second floor, the work that's already been done?
I mean, we could do a retroactive approval of the second floor windows as well. Basically just, approve the replacement of windows and adding trim. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. We'll then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. I guess I'll start us off. I agree with staff's review and assessments that I would prefer the cottage style to be maintained and the modification to the size of the opening so that it maintains the historic character of the building versus the size of that character using modern materials. I do agree with the approval of approving the trim work around the window also to work that modification of the size into the design. And I am in support of including the second floor windows in this approval so that we at least get the work approved to date, since the original windows and the new windows do match in character and are of a upgraded material than a traditional vinyl window. Other questions and comments from other commission members?
Madam Chair, I just want to note that the future scope of work, which is not our vote today, the porch as proposed is, as far as I can tell from the sketch, looks very nice. And when you come back with a scale drawing and dimensions, we'll look forward to that review. So I think it's a good improvement on what's there now.
Along with the future colors you select if you go beyond the
yes, materials and colors and everything. Yes.
Okay, I do have a question real quick, if I may. For the front porch review moving forward, do I need to get actual like architectural drawings to redo that front porch with the materials and everything? Because what we're looking to do is just, besides leveling out, I mean, if you look at the front of the house, you can see the left side of the porch dropping pretty significantly. So besides having to redo that, foundation of the footer, get it up to, the appropriate level, what we're going to be doing is just replacing that, siding with the cement board and paint and whatnot. So with that.
To answer your question, I think you can work with staff. They don't have to be they need to be scaled drawings. They do not have to be created by an architect. But as long as you can demonstrate what is there existing and what you're proposing in the future at a appropriate scale, then you can work with staff to get all the documentation in prior to coming back to us to review that work.
All right, awesome.
All right, so we have, thank you for that additional clarification, Director Wong. Any additional questions and comments from the commission?
Madam Chair, I would add, I would be surprised if there's not part of the original railing under the existing railing. So I would suggest doing some selective demolition and pulling some of those boards out and seeing if you do have some original material under there.
Awesome. And is that something I need to do after I come to you guys? Like, should I get drawings approved from you guys before I start? If I can do a little sneak peek, take a little demo of that select the demo of that front porch railing, see if there is actually stuff underneath there. And if there is, I can have my drawings done to what's there, or should I come to you guys first before I start doing anything?
No, I think the former there. I think there's an opportunity to just remove, especially from the back where no one would notice it, just pull some of those boards off, see what's behind there, come up with a plan based on that. And then, you can always work with staff if you want us to come out and advise or do anything like that. But I'd recommend, as Mr. Sambry said, pulling off some of those boards, seeing what's under there, and particularly at the corners. I'm curious what the columns might have looked like under there, if there was any kind of stonework or anything like that present. So,
Okay, awesome.
Any further discussion from the commission?
Just a quick comment. Thank you, Madam Chair. You may also try looking for some historic photographs. You might find them at the public library, or Detroit Shoreline might have some. So you might want to look into that. That might give you some direction.
Yeah, so I did contact the archives. I got a picture from 1960s, what they had, and it looked like potentially the aluminum siding might have been on already. The front porch had the aluminum siding on it already, so there was no. The house was built in 1890. So there was nothing as far as documentation, at least through the archives, for this property, before 1960.
Yeah, the library has a pretty good collection, and
Okay.
like I say, sometimes you might want to contact Detroit Shoreway because they sometimes have some historic photographs, or near West Neighbors now,
Okay, near West Neighbors and Detroit Shoreway.
or Northwest Neighbors.
Northwest neighbors, yeah.
Well,
It
can't
is
keep
super
up.
name. We're just trying to get used to it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any further questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
I'll move that we approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion, do you want to add in retroactively approving the second floor window replacement so that they're compliant?
Yes.
And with the condition that they return for any railing replacement, column replacement, and painting of the house?
That sounds good.
Okay. Director Wong, who's,
I support that.
thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Musson, please call roll.
all right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Director Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you for returning, and we look forward to seeing your project continue to progress.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant located at 2110 Fairview Avenue renovation. We like people who come in person. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to just put a comment out into the ether that, we really do want people to come in person. It helps the discussion a lot, so.
Much more fun to be in person.
So thank you for joining us in person.
Materials, yeah.
Hi, I'm Dave Maddox from Modern Smart Homes, and this is Eric Kennedy, the property owner and client, which is great. We're super excited to be here for this project. It's a great, solid apartment building at the corner of Murray Hill and Fairview. It kind of sits back off of Murray Hill a bit, and it's sort of pushed tight against the back property line where Fairview makes the bend around there. It's currently in its history, it's been an apartment building, and it's although a solid-ish building, it's kind of fallen on a little bit tougher times. The inside is pretty rough and tumble. So Mr. Kennedy has had the vision to convert this apartment building to his private residence. And it's a really cool way of maintaining the fabric of the neighborhood and having the pretty decent brick apartment building converted to a new use. And we're excited to be able to do that. So part of the criteria for making this work is that we really needed to get a garage space as a part of the construction. And the way it's situated on the site, there's no opportunity to do any sort of structure anywhere without mugging up the whole property. So we've decided to incorporate it on the first floor level off of the back side of Fairview there. And that's sort of the major design move that we've done as far as the massing of the building, in addition to sort of building up a little bit as well. So I'm going to flip through to the existing condition photographs of the building. You can kind of see as it winds around, it sits sort of respectfully back on the western corner. Sort of that lower left photograph shows the Murray Hill side. It's got a porch on that and has a pretty decent fenced in front yard, which is nice. As it turns the corner, the long direction, there's an entrance, show up super well, I'll show you in a rendering. There's an entrance on Fairview on the long dimension of the building, and then there's also an entrance on the short dimension of the building to separate halves where the apartments existed. We are maintaining the long, this way. So in the upper right rendering, there's an entrance toward the left side that has the arched window above. We're maintaining that as the main entrance to the building, to the residence. We are modifying it in such that that arch does not exist now in window form. It is an infill panel of brick. So we're maintaining the proportion, we're maintaining all the brick trim around it, and we're doing an opening inside that brick to give it some connection of windows to the two levels inside. There are balconies that exist now that are pretty bad shape, that we are changing the interior fenestration patterns on those balconies. In the entirety of the building, we have punched openings with stone headers and double hung windows. Currently now they're sort of white and they stand out pretty strongly from the brick, and I don't know that that was what they were originally. These are not original windows to the place. So working with the design review committee at Little Italy, we've settled on going to we're going to use a Colby clad, aluminum clad window, and we're going to go with a khaki color, which matches the stone header and stone sill. It kind of softens the elevation and gives it a little bit more calmness about it. It doesn't contrast quite as roughly as the white does. And the review committee was fully on board with that approach. On the Fairview Avenue long elevation, the only major changes we're making are within the recessed balconies. And we're going to a steel door system there. We're going to use a Bromball steel windows and doors on those replacement areas, and take that opportunity where everything is sort of flush with the brick. We're maintaining everything that's there, but where we step back sort of respectfully from the face, we're changing the patterns there. And what that'll do is make the interior of the house have a really interesting dynamic, and it is a nice clean way to do that. In that same mode, we're extending up a roof penthouse that will be an extension of where those windows and doors are. Switch the floor plans here. This shows a little bit more cleanly what we're proposing as far as the windows and door patterns within those recesses. And it's kind of a nice way to introduce a more current, more slightly more modern interjection into this historic building facade. And what it then does is ties the ability to kind of extend up to the penthouse level, and it kind of ties up those nicely together, maintaining the same colors and patterns as it extends through the building. The penthouse steps back from the brick parapet. We're not interrupting the parapet and keeping that 6 feet back from the face. So it, when you're on the sidewalk level, when you're at the street level, this is kind of a little bit further away view. It doesn't impact your impression of the scale of the building at all. So this is, I'm just going to look through the floor plans here. So what we're showing here is the lower level, the basement level. And you can see how we're stepping back on the right-hand side of the drawing, where we're gonna introduce this new garage elevation. On the garage side, we're holding the garage doors back from the face of the building, so it doesn't feel like there's a new modern garage door right on the face of the building, kind of like we've done on the porch and balcony levels. We're pulling it back so it doesn't, so it has some respect for the existing brick facade of the building. This is showing the level above. You can see in the middle of the plan, we have this dining space that we're introducing these new steel door systems, both on the top and the bottom of that room. And then that room also extends up into the penthouse level. So it's going to be a volume connection between floors, as well as introducing those same type of materials to extend through. This is the third floor, the rooftop, which we're introducing an office, and sort of the gridded thing on the right is sort of the second floor of the dining below. So it looks down into this dining area and connects everything nicely together. We're gonna have an office, powder room, a little bit of a patio and garden areas up top. And then we're gonna connect it by elevator. So we're gonna connect all 3 floors by elevator as well, which sort of tucks away on the back side of the building. So we have the renderings, but this is the elevational drawings of it. And you can see sort of the fenestration patterns of those windows and doors that connect straight up through the building, and a siding that is gonna, where we're introducing these doors and windows, it's kind of a mixture of bad proportioned windows now. So we're kind of cleaning up that whole composition a bit. And the siding material that we're gonna use is gonna flank the doors and then extend on up to that penthouse. So it leads as a connection between the whole space. The balance of the penthouse space up top will be stucco that will be matching the stone headers and parapets there, so it will tie together. This is looking at both the Murray Hill side of the elevation, the left one, and we maintain the 2-story part and maintain the parapet. And then the penthouse part sits way back on that face, so it won't be an imposition on the scale of the existing building. To the left of that, the upper level of penthouse, you see the stucco that's sort of indicated by the stipple type pattern. And then beyond it to the left is the elevator enclosure, which are also kind of connecting across the top to sort of bridge it, make it an architectural element instead of just a little shaft that pumps up. And that's also reflected on the right side elevation. You can see it beyond as well. So our goal on the garage side of the building is to do a door that's concealed in the wall. We don't want it to read as a sort of a suburban garage door with glass panels, and we want that to just be a recessed plane in there that ties into some of the other materials that we're using as it goes forward. We went through PetBot, we went through the whole planning process of making sure we have clearances and access for the driveway through that sidewalk on that side. Right now, cars sort of park along there on the sidewalks, and it's sort of a mess right now. So our intervention of this will clean up some of the existing issues with the house, I think. As far as fenestration patterns change on the right side elevation, currently, go back here for a second. So if you look at the southern corner, I suppose, there's currently an entrance on that side of the building. It's on the sort of the middle one on the left side. There's an entrance, and you enter into a stair hall, and the windows are sort of staggered to reflect the stair hall. What we're doing is we're going to introduce this garage door and then introduce new windows at the top that align with the balance of the windows on that elevation. So it's sort of cleans up that elevation a little bit and refers to the use that's going on behind it. We're gonna use the same brick. We're gonna reclaim and salvage the brick that we're moving in other places to do the brick rebuild. We're really excited about the opportunity to make this a useful building and extend its life and keep the fabric of the city. We're open for any questions you might have or comments.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
We will then move on to design review committee comments and recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a reminder, the commission saw this project as a concept back June 8th, 2023. So, they've taken a lot of those comments to heart. It was reviewed by the Little Italy Design Review Committee at their January 23rd, 2024 meeting and was approved after some discussion with conditions that the applicant change the side balcony railings to have vertical spindles and appear consistent with the Murray Hill porch railings. In addition to the porch railings, the committee also discussed the color of the garage door. There's some feeling that it may be too dark and appear like more of a void than anything. Also, some concern noted regarding the configuration and color of the side balcony doors and windows, feeling that they may have too much of a commercial feel. Ultimately, none of those discussions made it into the motion aside from adjusting the railing design, which was done and is incorporated into this presentation. It was approved by the local committee last week. And before we get into the staff review, I believe I saw Mr. Marinucci here from Little Italy Redevelopment, if we want to see if he has any further comments.
Welcome, Mr. Marinucci. Do you have any additional comments to add?
Joe, if you're talking, you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Okay, well, why don't we move on to landmark staff recommendations, and Mr. Marinucci, if you are able to adjust your mic, then we can hear any comments you may have.
Okay, so staff has, as Dan noted, we've seen this conceptually in June 8th, 2023. At that time, commission members discussed preference for a lighter color scheme, which was adjusted, as well as retaining details on entry doors and the importance of landscaping with design. Thank you. Okay, next slide. So it can sometimes be helpful to see the concept. So now that we're seeing the final, when they came for concept, they presented a darker window style as well as a lighter window style. Next slide. And so we are happy to see a more lighter change and other minimal changes from that concept design. Staff still has the same objections and concern as we mentioned in June with the reduction of affordable housing in the neighborhood and the prevalence of existing single family homes that have been split into multifamily that could be put back into a single family use. We have some same noted concerns with that garage on the corner, just with visibility, but we understand the desire to have off-street parking and the difficulty of finding it in this neighborhood. We understand the positive for increasing the available off-street parking for others in the neighborhood as well. We would like to see the materials being used in writing or an example of that darker garage door style, because we are interested in that. And otherwise, yeah, it's pretty similar to what was shown at concept.
Excellent, thank you.
So we do have samples.
We love samples.
Wonderful.
Right.
We're not used to seeing samples in person anymore.
So this is an example of the material that we're going to use for the siding. It's used this a lot lately, and it's a super successful way of mimicking wood, and it does what it's supposed to do. I mean, it has the appearance and the feel, and way more durability, and it also has a range of pattern and texture that we like a lot. You know, this is this is the material that we're thinking of using for both the inset on the porch and the garage doors itself.
In one of those colors in front of us, or?
Yes, it's the charcoal color is our desired one. It goes sort of hand in hand with the renderings that we've used here. What we're not trying to do is make we're not trying to call attention to the material as much as we want it to fall back a little bit. And with the, you know, we're proposing Bromball steel windows and doors on the balconies and on the penthouse there. And the scale of those door frames, it's a very pretty, very classic style. It will not come across like a storefront aluminum modern interjection. I mean, it's as classic of a cool appearance as you can get. And we're going with the onyx steel color, and it's a nice combination of feel so that they blend, still read a little bit different, but the combination will be really nice. The soffits, we're going to use a more natural colored wood soffit on the penthouse up above that will have the appearance of like a cedar coming through ceiling, but it's the same type of product there. And then for the elevator enclosure, which is tucked on the plan here to show you where that's at. So currently it's up on the top of the page next to the walk-in closet. It's built into a recess on this balcony here. There's a porch that abuts the neighbor's property. And as much as we tried to work an elevator in through the heart of the building, it was hard because these levels there's a couple steps in the building. We've wrestled with the kitchen. Yeah, keeping it out of the kitchen. So we've tucked it in this corner, and it abuts two brick walls. We don't want to do brick around it, both because of size that we need, as well as trying to mimic and match the brick would be not a great thing. So we're contrasting it and doing it in a metal panel that will be, these are skinny and they look like siding, but it's actually, we're going to be larger panels of this. And what it does is it just works really nicely with brick and kind of falls back and is respectful to it, but doesn't try to mimic it. And it's a really cool, use a little bit larger panel of it, but it's made by Longboard. It's a really nice product. So that goes around the elevator and then goes across the top of the building as well. So these are the basic new materials that we're using. We're not using anything on the main body of the building other than the recessed faces away from the front of the brick.
Except for the stucco.
Stucco, true.
And is that, what color are you proposing for the stucco? It appears.
It's going to match so the Colby windows that we're doing, we're not doing replacement windows, we're doing new windows because we don't want to reduce the scale of the daylight openings. So we're demoing out, rebucking it and doing new windows there. And it's Colby's color is called khaki, and it matches very closely the stone headers. And so we're going to use a color that matches that so that there's not another layer of color that's introduced there.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
It does look like Mr. Marinucci is not able to unmute his mic, but did state something down below.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure and I didn't want to interrupt the discussion. Again, I just wanted to note that Little Italy Redevelopment Corporation fully supports the project and the recommendation by design review, which is, as you noted in the discussion, has been incorporated into the project. So thank you for allowing me to convey that support.
Thank you.
I guess the one thing that we didn't discuss, introduce is that Eric lives in the neighborhood now. He lives in the school building. He's a business owner, owns a business there as well, and he's committed. You know, we looked through a bunch of properties and tried to find one that would work, that would infuse, the right amount of life and stuff in there. So he's committed. He's not dropping in from the burbs.
Excellent. Thank you for that addition. Any further questions or comments from staff? Nope. Then we'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I remember this project from when it was presented as a concept design last June. And I loved the project then, and I still love this project. And I just can't overstate how much I respect and honor the commitment that the applicant is making to save this project. For whatever reason, its function as an apartment building it's been fallen into disrepair, and to have the vision to do this level of renovation and stabilization and rehabilitation to this structure, I think is commendable. And I'm very much in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I guess I will echo that. You know, I commend you for your commitment to trying to maintain the essence of this structure, but doing my modest modifications to meet your future program. I do support the modifications to the railing and what you've done related to the garage door. Would you mind going, Carl, to the next? Or do you have actually control? Do you mind going to the one they have all 4 elevations? There we go, that's it. I do hear design reviews comments about the color of the door. The previous rendition did have it in that sandstone or khaki color. I personally liked that, so that all the materials on this elevation were of the same family. And then your more modern interventions are the darker colors to really allow it to be stand separately on the long elevation, as you said it. But I personally don't think it's something I can object to the design. It's just my personal preference. But overall, I support the design and how you've done it. I'm interested just how you transition your materials from the wood to the darker material and the stucco on that front. It's a little, you can't quite see it in your renderings, but yes. But I think overall, I think your material palette is very handsome, and I think your design is. I support the design.
Thank you. Our intent with the dark recess on the garage door is just to be consistent. Where when we're on the brick face, we're maintaining that lightness. When we're recessing it, we're creating that same approach. On the penthouse up above, it kind of shows. So like where the gridded area is, the dark material returns to it, and then it's just the. Do I have a pointer on this or no? I don't know. Very good. Yeah. So wrapping around the office all the way around to the elevator on the other side is the light color. So we're ending it where it makes sense to end a color and starting it where it makes sense to start a color.
So inside corners.
Inside corners, always.
Yeah. That's preferred. So those are my comments. I'm in support of the project. Other questions and comments from the commission? Mr. Stanbury?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Overall, I really like this project. It's a really interesting take on a redevelopment of a historic building. My personal opinion, I really like it, but because we're tasked to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards, I don't know that the penthouse follows the standards as closely as they should. And the thing that really bumps me is the overhang. I think that makes the penthouse feel a lot bigger than it actually is. And it gives it a shadow, which makes that darker and more obvious to the eye. And because you're on a corner, you're going to see this from further away than you would if it was just in a normal progression of buildings. So that projection on the penthouse, I don't object to, but I think it could be pulled back a little bit. just to give it, less obvious of a change to the building.
We looked at it without having any overhang, and it felt like it was just, didn't have a termination to it. It just felt like it was an uncomfortable hat on the building. This one, it felt like it tied the two masses together a little bit there. And it does actually have some functional purpose on the Murray Hill side where doors open out to it. And
Like my shade.
yeah, our goal was to have some ability to open doors and still have some covering and protection of that. And we didn't want it, and I guess the other thing is we didn't want it sort of jig-jogging around. We wanted a pretty clean resolution to it. I understand you're gonna look up into it a little bit.
Right.
It does sit back a bit, and it does, you will see it, but it didn't feel like it was in a position onto the
And
structure.
how tall is the parapet?
The parapet is like 42 inches. It's, it's decent now. We're still going through the structural parts of rebuilding the roof to be able to do this. So that final number is somewhere around there. And then it disappears on the backside. The parapet wraps around the three main sides, and then on the neighboring property to the south, it turns into just a sloped gutter.
Yeah, because the roof pitches that.
The roof pitches away, away from this elevation.
And I think that's the elevation you have the most flexibility with.
It does, because it's
You
like
touch
not,
another building.
that's kind of where that's why we located the elevator tucked into that, because it was not, it was away from everything else.
Yeah, like I said, I personally like this, but as a position on the board, I think I need to call attention to that overhang.
Thank you, Sandberg. Other questions, Mr. Buell?
Madam Chair, I'll support this project. I think that not just the commitment, but I think this attention to detail and the love and care is to be commended whenever we see that. And I think it's a really good example in some ways of the national park standard of it's new, it's existing, it's existing. It's really does that a lot. So the railing on the back side or the other long side of the building, that would be a metal railing then to match the.
So we were doing glass along that side. It kind of, it disappears from view a little bit, but we wanted to still have openness. We didn't want to have.
Oh, so that's
So it's, on this back side, it's not exposed to street fronts at all. We just wanted to do something a little bit more along that side.
So that railing is actually glass?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buell. Other questions and comments from the commission?
Mr. Lozier has his hand up.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Lozier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to just say, I echo a lot of what my fellow commission members have noted. I think this is a very handsome project. I actually don't have any issue with the dark material at the garage door. I think to the applicant's point, it helps to make the project more cohesive and not introducing another material. I guess I have a couple of questions. One, is there any anticipation or need to do any tuck pointing to the brick or any repairs to the brick?
Sure. We are in a couple different locations, especially around the recessed balconies and some on the parapet walls. It's a little chotched up there. I mean, it's not a very, it's shown its wear from that. So there will be some repair as it goes along. The entire opposite face from the Fairview long side is more of a utility brick back there. This has a really pretty nice face brick on the three sides, and then the back side is just clearly didn't care brick. I mean, it's a utility brick. So there will be some repair, and there will be some adjustment of that. Largely, it's in pretty solid shape.
Great. I would just recommend providing staff with any sort of new materiality if things need to be replaced or grout to make sure that it matches the the existing route that's there. And then similarly, you mentioned that you'll be reclaiming any brick that gets removed for the garage opening. And it looks like you're bricking up some of the sort of basement level windows on the main long elevation. And I would just I assume, don't want to assume that the intent would be to use that brick to infill those openings.
Completely, yep. And we're picky about mortar and color and texture and all that stuff, so we'll be on that.
Awesome. Yeah, and I wouldn't. I mean, based on the quality of the presentation and attention to detail, I don't have any doubts that you won't be. And then the final sort of question that I have is really just the materiality choice of stucco. I know I love stucco, but I've seen also the effects that Cleveland weather has on that material. And just noting I don't oppose it here, but just the recognition that regular maintenance to maintain this will be necessary to maintain the integrity and to maintain the look into the future. But overall, I really like this project, and again appreciate the presentation today.
Thanks. Yeah, we chose stucco because it's a neutral material. It didn't have a texture or a pattern or a rhythm to it. And it is, where we use stucco a fair amount, cement stucco. We don't do a dry bit thing. It's a pretty cement stucco, and it's protected by the roof overhangs. So we feel pretty comfortable about that. The other thing we note is that we are the architect and we're also the builder on the project. We do sort of design build approach to things, but it's an architect-led build rather than a contractor-led design build. So we'll be involved intensively all the way through.
Okay. Thank you for that addition. Mr. Lozier, any additional questions? All right, thank you.
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Dr. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say for the record that I really, in spirit, echo a lot of the comments that my colleagues have already shared. But in my own opinion, just want to say that I really like the fact that this multi-family dwelling unit is being converted to a single family dwelling unit, and without demolishing any of the frame houses or displacing any of the other families in the immediate vicinity of this building, and basically has the same footprint as that apartment building had in an earlier era. So I like it a lot. Thank you very much for the investment and for teaching me a lot about architectural drawings and materials in this one meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I'm hearing fairly consistent consensus. Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, let me ask a quick question just for clarification of my point. The use of stucco in Little Italy. I know we see stucco throughout Cleveland and so on, but in this immediate neighborhood, is this a material that we see in Little Italy a lot? Is this introducing something new that would have been used by or be an appropriate material for the period of significance and the architecture that is in this neighborhood? I just asked that question because I don't come up against it a lot here. We see it in other applications in other neighborhoods, but specifically in Little Italy, I don't know too many examples of it.
I think the Alta House addition is stucco, and I think there's some homes on Fairview Court. The Gogol home, which is a double, 2 homes are stucco. And maybe on Vidantonio's funeral home on Murray Hill. But other than that, I don't know of any. Just thinking off the top of my head, but those are 3 examples, I think.
I would say with masonry architecture and masonry building, this is a tile and brick building. It's not a frame, it's a tile and brick, which is super fun to work with. But it has, it's an appropriate material for that type of construction. I understand. That's why we went to that rather than going to another siding product up there, just because that felt like it would be, it felt like it played along well with the sandstone headers, the color, the texture of it all. It just felt like it fell back and would be appropriate.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing and hearing no additional comments and hearing consensus, would someone like to put forward a motion?
Motion
Mr.
to
Dooley?
approve as presented. Thank
All
you,
right.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dulick. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion? All right, not seeing any. Mr. Musk, please follow.
Hey, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lozier? Mr. Sandberry?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Well, thank you.
Thank
And
you,
good luck with your
appreciate
project.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Can I ask you a question? I have the unfortunate position of being the president of the board of Murray Hill condominiums. We're having windows replaced.
Yeah.
And we always tell them to go to Landmarks first. And the contractor's email said Landmarks approved the new windows in our building. Is that documented somewhere? Do I look at your minutes or is there a docket or?
Out after the meeting offline. I'm sure Carl or Jennifer can help you, or Jess can help you, find staff.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for coming in person.
Appreciate it.
We'll then move on to our next applicant located as West 32nd and located at 3210 Franklin Boulevard, the new construction of the West 32nd and Franklin apartments. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Please unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Wesley Harper with Horton Harper Architects, and we're going to be discussing the project at West 32nd and Franklin. The developer is the Dalla Group, and the representative of that company today, the development side, would be James Simmons. If there's any specific questions for the developer, he'll be able to weigh in appropriately. Next. So we were here back in November, December, I believe, to present this schematically or conceptually, I suppose. And so I'll quickly go through kind of the front end of the project here, but the project site is at the northeast corner of West 32nd and Franklin Boulevard in Ohio City, a couple blocks west of Franklin Circle, and of course 2 blocks south of Detroit. Next. Here you can see the general footprint of the site. We have, a pretty diverse context, a very eclectic context, and so in the next set of slides, we'll look at the have around us. Next. Here we have the site as it exists today, obviously without the leaves, however. Right now it's a vacant site, again, at the corner of 32nd and Franklin. To our east, we have a kind of a multi-family existing home, and then the same to the north. But on site, we have a variety of kind of overgrowth and vegetation. We have a handful of street trees that we'll be looking to maintain. Next. Here is a better view of that house directly to our east, kind of a 2.5-story multi-family home. Next. Here, a little bit further east, you can see we have a structure that had an addition put on the front of it, probably sometime in the 1910s or 20s. And then a smaller ranch style building to the east. Next. Here to our west, we have the former YMCA, which is currently condominiums, kind of a 3.5-story masonry project that anchors that corner across from us to the west. Next. Here to the south and southwest, right here, we have a senior living complex. And then to the left is the Franklin Yards project, which is currently undergoing renovation. And we'll see a better picture of this in the next couple slides. Next. Here is the a portion of the Franklin Yards project along West 31st in Franklin. Obviously, we have a masonry structure here with sandstone detailing, pitched roof. And so again, this is undergoing renovation right now. And this Franklin Yards that you see here is looked at as a phase one, a multi-phase project. And then the West 32nd Franklin Apartments that we're discussing today is essentially a phase two of that. It's the same developer, so a fair amount of investment is happening here with this group. Next. To our north, as I mentioned, we have another multifamily and more residential structure along West 32nd. And then to the right of that, you can see there are 4 modern 4-story townhomes. And then across the street on Vine Court, you have another handful of townhomes as well. Next. Here's the view down Vine Court. You can see the multifamily residential homes on the right, and then the half a dozen or so townhomes on the north side of Vine Court. Those are 4 stories, and the project that we'll be discussing today is actually shorter than that. Next. And so just kind of the larger context, here is a set of townhomes at the corner of Clinton and 32nd. Next. Then we have a newer apartment building on Clinton that's a little bit east of West 32nd. Next. And then here is Dexter Place at Franklin Circle. Next. And here we have the existing site plan. Right now, it is 2 parcels, which would eventually be consolidated into a single parcel to accommodate the structure that we're proposing. You can see to the right or to the east, we have an existing access easement, which is in agreement with the home directly to the east, and then I believe to the parcel to the north. So essentially, there's a 12-foot easement generally there, because we have our parcel has 6 feet or a 6-foot easement onto the parcel to the east. Next. So here we have I'm sorry, but the site plan looks to be a little bit off, but we have the proposed site plan, and we have a 3-story structure at that northeast corner, kind of a U shape, looking to anchor that corner of 32nd and Franklin, and then of course the Franklin Boulevard facade. There is a 10-foot mapped setback along Franklin Boulevard, and we'll of course be respecting that setback with only balcony projections and front porches for the first floor units engaging with that 10 feet. Later on, you'll see that we have a really nice amount of area for landscape to really create a green buffer along Franklin Boulevard. And in response to some of the comments we got from the Ohio City Landmarks group, in this scheme that you see here, the building has been shifted and shrunk a bit in the east-west dimension to get more room for landscaping along the West 32nd frontage. Also, in response to the commentary we received last Thursday at the Ohio City Landmarks, we were able to revise the floor plans, elevations, and renderings to reflect some of their requirements for conditional approval. So we'll get into that as we go through the progress here. Next. So here you can see the updated design. This is the Franklin facade. The last time we were here, we received some feedback on the concerns of using kind of a charcoal or black brick. To some, it seemed a little overwhelming, and perhaps a palette that maybe reflected the more orange and red and brown of the surroundings made sense. So this was a revision based on those comments. we also kind of realigned and reconfigured the balconies along the front here to align vertically to really make this facade feel more vertical and less horizontal compared to the previous scheme. And I think the lighter, more colorful brick here makes sense, kind of lives in between the orange and reddish brick of the YMCA, the more brown brick of the Franklin Yards project, and but still kind of commands its own character. So again, you can see a really nice amount of landscaping along Franklin, and then the front porches at the first floor of each unit. I feel like this scheme also lends itself a bit more to the pitched roof that we have here. The brick and cement board of the first, second, and third floors is very deliberately capped by a more, basically a metal horizontal band, and then the pitched roof kind of engages with that. So I almost feel like the building has a very appropriate cap to it. Next. Here's a view looking towards the northeast from essentially the southeast corner of Franklin and 32nd. You can start to see the kind of the three-dimensional quality of this facade. So for the first and second floors in general, we have brick, and then on that third floor, for most of this facade, we're taking advantage of the dimensional difference of a brick wall and then a wall clad in lath siding to really give that brick a bit more prominence. We also have very strong vertical elements with the masonry going from basically ground to the metal capping. And then we further represent the vertical orientation or vertical direction with some additional vertical slices in the brick that you can see here. Next. Here's kind of the opposite view looking towards the northwest. Again, you can see kind of the three-dimensional quality to the facade. You know, these balconies are looked at as an opportunity to really break down this overall scale of the project. And you can even see that metal cap that sits above the third floor has some openings at the balconies to allow sunlight to penetrate into those deeper areas. Next. This facade was really the biggest conversation point with the Ohio City Landmarks Committee. Excuse me. And so what we did compared to the scheme that we had previously was extend the brick from just the first floor on this facade, kind of to the left, extend it up to the top of the floor slab of the third floor, and then create an additional masonry vertical element at that northern face, essentially. And so, again, part of Ohio City Landmarks Commission conditional approval was us basically working through that. And so to get this updated scheme in front of you, we worked very, very quickly to put this together and have it as part of this presentation. But you can see, again, on this side, we have a fair amount of depth in regards to how the facade plays as it moves horizontally and vertically as well. And again, in my opinion, I think that the pitched roof starts to engage well with the architecture here as well. Next. Here's a view looking towards the southeast from West 32nd. Another change in this facade was to push the bike storage access to the West 32nd sidewalk face. So you can see at the center of this image, there's a set of doors that have glazing in it and would be lit, 24 hours a day to basically get an active use on West 32nd. That area was previously just kind of a utility entry area. You can start to see here the vertical element here at this corner that really kind of allows the architecture of Franklin to turn onto West 32nd and allow that to feel like a primary facade and not a secondary one. Next. Here we have a view kind of in the middle of the rear of the property, looking towards some of the entries from the surface parking in the back. One of the other comments that design review came up with at Ohio City Landmarks was to raise the parapet that you see here on this long facade to obscure the rooftop units that would be there for all of the air conditioning units. So we did that, and so this is kind of a new image here as well. Next. And then back to the front, just a kind of a zoomed in view of that first rendering we looked at of the Franklin facade. I think, you know, with this being a south facing facade, there'll be a lot of play with shadow throughout the day. And again, a really extensive amount of landscaping potential here to really soften that urban edge. Next. Here is the first floor plan. You know, you can see at the upper left, we switched that bike storage area to that facade. And then we're also articulating that vertical masonry element here. Everything else is relatively similar to what you've seen previously, with the first floor units facing Franklin having their own individual front porches. Next. Second floor, very similar layout. You can start to see how the balconies, you know, inset into that floor plan. Next. And then the third floor is very similar. Next. We have of course, the two-dimensional elevations of each facade. You can see maybe more clearly here the percentage of glazing versus solid wall, and then lap siding versus brick. Next. And then here's the West 32nd facade. Next. And then the northern facade. Next. And the eastern facade. Next. I think we went through the material palette, but you know, again, more of a reddish, orangish brick for the structure. That would be a black asphalt shingle roof, not black standing seam as noted there. And then the fiber lapped cement board shown at the bottom left, a bit of cast in place concrete exposed, black window frames, and then black finish for the exterior lighting. Next. And then here we have the landscape and lighting plan. If anybody has any questions about that, you can get into it as in depth as needed. But along that West 32nd curb cut, there would be appropriate screening and vegetation and fencing per the zoning code. Next. And then here we have the tree plan, which was a requirement for schematic review. We've since received some feedback from an arborist that we brought onto the team. And we've also met with the neighbors on the existing tree at that northeast corner. And so I believe with that, that's the conclusion of the presentation. Again, we were here for concept approval back in 2023, been to Block Club. So any questions you may have, I'd be happy to answer them, and thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll then move on to design review committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As noted, this project was seen by the Ohio City Design Review Committee most recently on February 1st. They recommended to approve with conditions. Some of them, Mr. Harper noted, conditions that the West 32nd elevation have a brick pilaster added at the rear corner, or there be masonry added to mimic the Franklin Boulevard elevation. Additional recommendations included that the stone lintel should be added to masonry openings, the rear corner entrance moved to West 32nd Street, that a change to a flat roof be explored, and to rethink the screening at the top of the north elevation. And so some of those were noted and changed in presentation. They did discuss the brick being used, and in that meeting, the applicant stated the brick soldier course lintels would be used instead of during that discussion of the stone lintels.
Thank you. And landmark staff recommendation?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Staff appreciates the applicant's willingness to consider and incorporate the comments made by this commission when it was reviewed as a concept on November 30th, 2023. I think we have some images from that concept review to kind of refresh your memory, if that's helpful. The applicant has also made adjustments based on the comments of the Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee when they conditionally approved this project last week. The applicant has met the conditions laid out by the Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee, and staff feels that the building does meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for new construction within a historic district. It utilizes form, scale, and materials found within the district without creating a false sense of history. Therefore, staff recommends approval. Also wanted to note that this did go before the PetBot committee, and they stated that a tree preservation plan would be required to be reviewed and approved by urban forestry. So,
okay, thank you. All right, then we will open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments.
Madam Chair, I just need to relay Director Wong notes her support of this project.
All right, thank you. Questions and comments, other questions and comments from the commission, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate, excuse me, it's really a dramatic change in design and the use of materials. I think it's a tremendous improvement over the conceptual design. I have a question. Are there any variances required as part of this project? It doesn't look like there's a 1-to-1 parking ratio, and I wondered if a parking variance is needed.
Yes, thank you for your question. We have a handful of variances for this. This is a two-family district. It will likely need a lot coverage variance, rear setback variance, and then the parking variance is a little interesting where, we're trying to move this project at a slightly expedited pace. And so we did submit for a zoning review this year. I assume everyone on Landmarks is aware, but the parking requirements that the city has in areas close to high-frequency bus and rail transit would eliminate the parking minimums. So while we technically do have fewer parking spaces than units, if we were to submit for a zoning review a couple months from now, that zoning variance would not be required. We have submitted site plan and plans and elevations to the building department. We have not yet received that notice of nonconformance, but having done this for a long time, those were the forecasted variances that we would need.
All right, so this project is located within the transit corridor that would make it eligible for limited or no parking?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, but you'll go through the variance process under the current zoning requirement.
That's correct.
So I have a question for the chairperson. Is it appropriate for this commission to include a support of the required variances as part of our motion on this project?
Yes, it is something that should be added to any motion.
Okay. And I'll look forward to the comments from my fellow commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other questions or comments? I guess I will go next. I echo what staff has stated that, I appreciate the applicant's willingness to listen to the comments, especially about materiality, and really trying to work within the context of materials on this street specifically. So I do like the direction that you've taken it. My only comment would be, and this is a personal preference, that to me your fascia, I would say, at the top of the brick piers feels a little bit weaker than I personally would like it, because I feel like the brick piers may appear like they're standing towers versus connected elements at the corner. So that would just be my very minor comment, is that I personally would prefer a larger profile for the horizontal at the top of the building. But overall, I'm in support of the project and appreciate your willingness to make the modifications quickly, also so that we can see the true design direction.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, beautiful project. I mean, thank you to all involved for the, I think, very solid response to the comments about the color, the massing, the detailing. I think done a really nice job. And I would also echo the chairwoman's comments about that top band and what is the kind of architectural nature of it. It does seem a little thin and abstract. So I would second that, and that's it is personal. I agree. I had just to back up a little bit. Again, this is more of a comment, but I thought I'd like to understand. So other than the units that actually front Franklin, all of the units on the upper floors and the units in the back, primary entrance is either to the units or through those two stairs tucked in the corners. And again, I know you probably need the unit count to make the numbers work. I understand that, but it seems to me that walkway is almost like a muse, and to sort of go around the back corner of the building, where the gentleman in the rendering is going around, that's the primary entrance for the majority of people living in this. I think that's going to be a really nice building. Sort of in line with what the Ohio City Design Review comments were. Again, I may not be able to be accommodated, but I always wish that walkway came through where that bike entrance is somehow, and that there was a connection to the main sort of social thoroughfare from a pedestrian perspective to get up and down through the building, had a presence on 32nd Street. It's more of an urban design and functional comment that I understand may not be able to be accommodated, but I guess I just ask it to be considered in the development of the design.
Sure, that's a really good question. The nature of the construction method that we're using here is, this is essentially, from a code perspective, 3 individual buildings that are, visually connected as one. So there's actually 3 stairs, one at the west, let's say, one in the middle in the rear, and then one at the east. And so the building code essentially states that you can't have more than 4 units per floor for 3 stories if you're only going to have 1 exit. So and just the constrained nature of the site, unfortunately we weren't able to get that West 32nd facade to have an entry. What we did, though, compared to our previous plan, and this is maybe a minor thing in the grand scheme of things, but we did rotate that entry to unit 109 here that you see at the bottom left to come off of West 32nd, and then moving that bike storage to the West 32nd facade. If we did have, let's say, an entry to the entire building, that double door component that we have at the bike storage would be very similar to what that is. And I understand that doesn't maybe meet the social nature that you brought up for having an entry on 32nd, but that's just kind of the background of where we were coming from there. So in order to have, the high quality materials that we're showing here, this type of construction is what was required to make that happen. And so we feel that it's kind of an acceptable trade-off to having the large expanse of brick and all of that. to have the design that we have essentially. And so for the entries off the rear, you know, we are working hard to, you know, start to animate that pedestrian experience as you kind of head to that walkway that runs parallel with the parking along the building. So we have basically hip level planters that would have, you know, bushes and ferns perhaps to make that entry feel a little more expressive, and then also offer privacy to those first floor units that look out towards the rear. So that is something that the development team has been very conscious of, and I think in the end it'll be a really nicely detailed and you know, interesting part of the project. So those are some of the minor things that we're working on to make that a more enjoyable experience.
Okay, oh, thank you. It's about the consciousness of the connection between the unit entrances, like where your front door is conceptually in the street. That's so I don't know what else could be thought about in relation to what it's like to move around the corner of the building and to where all those stairs are. And I completely understand the constraints of single egress units and the limitations thereof. But I just wanted to have this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bula. Other questions and comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson, did you raise your hand?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have to say this is a huge improvement over the initial design that was presented as a concept. I think the introduction of a warm colored brick is a very positive step. I'm glad that there's quite a bit of brick being used here. I liked some of the comments with the stone lentils. I guess you're using a soldier course instead. My concern is that there are very few vacant parcels remaining on Franklin, especially on the east end. And Franklin has always been a premier street for historic preservation. There's a couple generations of people who have taken back these buildings from slumlords and spent a lot of time, care, and love restoring them. So I think we have a standard to maintain here, which I think is important and achievable. And I'm not sure whether, I think we're getting close here, but I don't know if we have something that is contributing to that the strong historic elements of this street. Like I say, I think we're going in the right direction, but I think more articulation is still needed. I think it still looks a little bit institutional and a little bit commercial. And those basically are my comments. I think the softening is done with landscaping, but the building itself, you know, kind of lacks a warmth. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission? Mr. Lozier?
Madam Chair. I also want to commend the applicant on the transformation of the project as it sits today, compared to the concept review. So I won't go into all of those details that everyone's already sort of described, but I do appreciate, you know, the character and simplicity that this design brings, and I think that you've done a nice job in breaking down the scale, you know, as you have with some of the reveals within the brick. to make it feel like it's not this sort of mass of one material. I think you've done a really nice job in breaking it down and breaking down the scale to make it feel more to the pedestrian level. A couple of just general questions, and I think this one came up I think in the last conversation, and which is the hipped roof, and I'm assuming that that's a nature of cost versus it being a flat roof. Right.
Yeah, that's correct for the most part, but also general maintenance for the roof. The development team that was one of the prerequisites for the project. So I think as this has went along, it's started to feel a little bit more part of the architecture. And there will be certain views like from Franklin that you simply wouldn't see it, which is maybe where it has, I think the West 32nd facade probably has more of a visual acceptance to that type of roof form. So yeah, it is cost and maintenance. And again, it's part of the trade-off of, using a large amount of brick, frankly, for a project. And so maybe some areas where it's less impactful is where, we'd hope to maybe be a little bit more efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, thank you for that. And I do think that the roof does feel much more integrated into the building as it sort of is presented today than it had previously. I appreciate the adjustments that you made to the West 32nd Street facade in conjunction with the commentary from the design review committee. I think that it really does help to bring the feel of what we're seeing on Franklin around the corner, and does make it feel more cohesive as a project. One of the considerations, as this project continues to move forward, and I think in certain alignment with one of the comments from one of my other colleagues had mentioned, is the pedestrian experience as you're moving around to the unit, to access the units from the rear, and thinking about blacktop as a material versus some other permeable pavement, or something that makes it feel less like a parking lot and more like a courtyard. So maybe thinking of something other than blacktop there, again, to make it feel like it's a little bit more elevated of an experience. But other than that, I think those are all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lozier. Other questions or comments? Hearing fairly consistent comments, would someone like to make a motion? Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Strickland.
Chair, I'll move to approve the project as presented, including support for the required variances and consideration of, I'm going to say, strengthening the horizontal band on the Franklin elevation.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Alan. I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Dryer. We have a second. Any further discussion? Right, not hearing or seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Dryer?
Yes.
Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Can I be curious because I stepped out?
Will abstain.
Abstain.
Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sambry?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Trasick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Trapp?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes by a vote of 8-1 with one abstention.
All right. So your project has been approved. We look forward to seeing your project progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll then move on to our next applicant located at 326 East 156th Street on demolition.
Good morning, this is Beth Mackey with the Demolition Bureau under the Building and Housing for the City of Cleveland. We are bringing to you today a request for demolition for the project located at 326 East 156 or at 334 East 156. We began, if you'd like to go to the next slide, excuse me. The project is currently condemned. It was condemned on December 8th of 2022. Under this condemnation, we are seeking the approval of the complete demolition of this two-story building, religious structure built 1906 and 1924, currently owned by Melba Moore Fine Linen LLC and vacant. As of the time of this submittal, we had received 19 complaints and boarded the property 15 times. Current back taxes are 0. We are proposing to post demolition, clearing, grading, and seeding the lot. And this is a priority demolition for Councilman Pawlenty. This is an exterior view of the site last summer. Next slide, please. This is an overview of where the property sits at the intersection of Macaulay and East 156. It is in a mixed-use area surrounded by residential and commercial and on a main thoroughfare for the city. Next slide, please. This is an orientational page. The north adjoining apartments. Adjacent to the east across the street is a learning center. We do have on the west a residential area. And again, on the east side, we have an auto repair facility for context. Next slide, please. Again, some surrounding pictures. Upper left is a cleaner view of the site, the two structures that meet the north boundary on the church that is very close to the apartment building. Again, the close property line to the residential structures southwest, and views along the east boundary from the southeast corner of the property. Next slide, please. Additional views along the south boundary heading into a residential corridor. We are now moving into interior photos of the structure. This is the sanctuary area. Next slide, please. We do have a basement in the north. It is beginning to undergo significant deterioration, and the west basement in showing some deterioration. Next slide, please. We do have offices in there, again, undergoing some significant deterioration. You do have below another view of the sanctuary, the significant deterioration. And then an outside view of the exterior where evidence of partially what is driving the significant interior deterioration of the site, which is we have significant opening in the roof as well as missing windows on the structure. Next slide, please. Again, these are just general interior photos of different parts of the project site. Stairwell going down, you could see there's a lot of deterioration. The brick is now becoming exposed. You do have some molding inside. And on the right side, you have a lot of deterioration, again, molding from the water infiltration. you could see that there's been some vandalism, some illegal accessing with the tire and so forth. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the interior of the sanctuary. Again, you could see a significant deterioration on the roofing. Windows are open. We do have some missing window components as well. Next slide. Again, a view with missing window components. You have a significant deterioration on the wall and the roof. On the right photo especially, you could see the sunlight through the missing roofing. In that particular photo, the ladder that is there, that is part of the ability for people to get into the site and vandalize it. Next photo, please. Again, just another viewpoint of the different openings throughout this roof. You've got the vegetation now creeping into the structure, missing windows, just general disrepair on the structure as well. Next slide, please. Just a different view. This is in the back. You could see again some open roofing area here as well. Just general disrepair. Next slide, please. Again, more close-up, missing windows, general disrepair, substrates are exposed, missing roof. Next slide, please. Again, different viewpoint of the vandalism, the open roof, missing windows, general disrepair and damage on the interior of the church. This is from the back balcony. Next slide, please. Fortunately, a closer look at the infiltrating vegetation and the status of the roof and the decaying on the inside of the church. Next slide, please. Closer look on the right is continued to be one of the heavier hit areas of the church. The one on the left is just a general office area on the church that again is showing significant decay, missing windows, vegetation, materials down to the substrate. Next slide, please. This is an area of where it sits. Again, we are proposing to demolish both the structures on the site, remove all foundations and subgrade materials such as the sewage system, footers, level, clean with backfill or infill with backfill and topsoil, seed and straw the project site once it is completed. Right. So from a 30,000 foot view, the project has been on Building and Housing's radar since 2004. That is when the first complaint came into the site, into Building and Housing. They have steadily increased. We've received 2 just this year. And then in 2023, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15. Each of those years we received multiple complaints either from Building and Housing staff, community, or Councilman Polensek requesting us to investigate the site. Based on that, we've had board ups where we've done board ups in 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and then again in 2024, where unfortunately we are only able to, both on size and cost, be able to board the first floor. So those really large stained glass windows that are open, we really are unable and we do not board those, but on the first floor, the smaller windows, the doors. Each time we have a board up complaint, we do pay to have that boarded. And then we had 3 violation notices go out on this property since 2016, which ultimately resulted in a final violation, which was converted to an approved condemnation in 2022. During this time, the church went into state forfeiture. That occurred in 2018, December of 2018. From December 3rd, 2018 to September 9th of 2022, it was held in state forfeiture. And then on September 9th of 2022, Melba Moore Fine Linen purchased the property. In City of Cleveland ordinance, any person who purchases a property does inherit any condemnations. There were violations on the structure, so they did inherit the violations. And then through no repairs, it was converted to a condemnation, which the current owner does own in their name. There has been some communication with the statutory agent on the project site since 2022, actually. So in 2022, the current owner, the statutory agent owner, did reach out to the city, and in fact reached out to Landmarks looking for an assistance with the building process for changes, financial assistance. That occurred in November of 2022. Landmarks did schedule a site visit to meet with the owner to look through the property, sort of do an on-site guidance and evaluation. It was scheduled, and then the owner, statutory agent, canceled a few weeks later. From our records, he was absent until last summer, where he did again reach out to the demo bureau. He presented vague plans of working with architects and contractors. We asked for their contact information to meet with the owner. It did not happen. He also indicated that he was looking at possibly purchasing or selling the project site and wanted to know if the city would be interested in purchasing it. And that is not something we necessarily take on ourselves. So again, after that secondary meeting, there really was no plans, applications submitted, things like that. We did throw it to our Landmarks Commission to see if there's any information, any assistance that can be provided, you know, reaching out to the statutory agent for any guidance. Unfortunately, the statutory agent was not receptive to it. Last summer, Councilman Polonsek escalated the request for demolition of this structure, again, because of the condition. We initiated our environmental due diligence on the site last summer, and some of those photos came from that, where we had an environmental consultant conduct a phase 1 environmental site assessment and an asbestos survey, so we knew what we were dealing with at the site. There really is nothing too concerning there. And then the statutory agent recently reached out to us again for assistance. And we did have a meeting with him in Landmarks Commission just a couple weeks ago here at City Hall, where cumulatively we discussed that he was sitting in it was a designated landmark that regardless if demolition went forward or not, his actions would need to be monitored and presented and approved. At that time, a couple weeks ago, he did not have any firm plans in place. Still, he had general conversations with an architect, but there were no architectural drawings in place. He did state to us that part of the reason why was the sheer financial cost of getting full architectural drawings developed. Once a project is condemned, in order to have permits pulled and get a certificate of occupancy on a non-residential, he would need to have full architectural drawings submitted to building and housing, full permits for plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and your general permit. He's looking to possibly have this rezoned. He does not really desire to keep it as a church as it is. At that point, he did indicate that he had approximately $25,000 earmarked for a full roof. Realistically, that is not, in our opinion, feasible. And he indicated that he thought it would take approximately $250,000 to repair the entire project site, which again, we feel it unfeasible and unrealistic. We did convey to him to meet with us, to reach out to us, that we could work with him on timeframes and set internal deadlines. We've done this before with building and housing, where if we see true interest and desire, we could sit with them and say, okay, let's show that you've entered into an agreement with an architect. Show us a retainer. Let's talk to the architect. How long will it take you to develop the plans? Okay, if it's 6 months, in 6 months, we come back and say, where are the plans? Let's look at it. So we give him internal deadlines where he's showing commitment and work with him. We offer that to him. We also presented to him at that meeting that I would be presenting to the design review 2 days later. He indicated he would attend, and electronically he was not on the meeting. So he did not show interest in attending. We had a wonderful hour-long meeting with the design review and myself about this project. And they were present in the meeting with the statutory agent. We understand the significance and the interest in the project site, but as building and housing, we are charged with the health and safety of the community. And we have to walk a balance of respecting that and the community as a whole, as well as understanding what your charges are. We look at all of these project sites specifically and see what we could do to assist. Part of our concern is he has owned the project site for 1.25 years, and there really has not been much to shore it up to prevent further decay. He has tarped it. As we know, in the winter in Cleveland, tarps do not last long. Unfortunately, when an inspector went out, he found that he did fencing without a permit. So we do have some concerns about him understanding the requirements and the processes for building and housing, for landmarks and so forth. We will acknowledge that he has cleaned up a lot of the vegetation on the site. He's gathered a lot of the debris that's been littering at the site and has put them in bags, but he's simply just storing it in one central location on the site. So there has been very minimal substantial reaction on this property after 1.25 years of owning it. I did reach out via email to the owner a couple days ago, asking for him to schedule a meeting with me, and I have not yet heard back. We did send copies of that correspondence, regular and certified mail, to the title owner and the statutory agent for the owner. In all fairness, it has been too early for them to receive the mailers, more than likely, but there has been no response to the email. So at this point, we are looking for an approval on demolition of this structure.
Okay, thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
Was there somebody present from the council Ms. office?
Yes, Madam Chair, it appears that Mary Louise Daly is here from Councilman Polensic's office.
Yes, I am.
Is there anything you'd like to say about the project before we move forward?
I'm just, this project is really, it's a hard one because while we, and I mean, the councilman's been advocating for its demolition for years, as Ms. Allmark had said. And it's just really difficult on a historic point of view. That's why we landmarked it, because it dates back to 1906 and is connected to the Collinwood School fire. But having said that, the owners, when it was an original church, and then when Tabernacle Baptist Church came in, they did nothing to preserve the church, or except then they walked away and allowed it to be then vandalized. Did nothing with the property. We were not able to take them to court, or nor get in touch with them. So the building is going to be demolished, and when we list it as demolition by neglect. And I'm not real happy with this new owner either, even though, and I commend Building and Housing for what they have tried to do with this new owner. And, we were able to get it. It went to state forfeiture mainly because had been working with Cleveland Restoration Society, the county, and anybody that we could think of to try to help to preserve this church building. Talk to everybody in the community, etc. So, as I said, unfortunately, me personally, I'm going to have to concede to a demolition of this building, even though, it's really going to be a hard day for me personally, and for the community to see this thing going down. The only thing that we had discussed also in this last meeting, and I really appreciate having that meeting last week, these stained glass windows, some of them, and you saw the ones that had the figures in them, are from 1924. They're done by a New York artist. They are historically valuable. I don't really know if the statutory agent or owner understands fully about those windows. And if he does try to salvage them, he'll try to, take them out and try to get as much money out of them as he could. Any of the other glass in the other windows is 1924 glass. And then there's the rose window, in the front. My only thing is that how can we go about getting a salvage plan for those windows and that glass, and getting it not just in somebody's hand to sell it to just anybody, but to actually, get it to somebody who can preserve those pieces and utilize them in some other form or fashion. I don't know if that's legally possible, but I'm willing to work with anybody to try to preserve those windows. I'm a historian for the community, and my background piece just is that Collinwood School fire, and that's why, I keep losing piece after piece after piece that connects us to our early history. And I can go on and on about that, but like I said, the building, unfortunately, the owner doesn't, like you said, doesn't understand that $250,000 isn't going to do anything into preserving and renovating that building. And I don't know who he's talked to for architects or planners or roofing materials or whatever either. So I'm here if there's any other questions to, ask and stuff like that. But I just want to thank everybody for their efforts on trying to do something with this building.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. We appreciate the comments. We will then move to design review committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Magnolia Wade Park East Boulevard Grant Allotments Design Review Committee on February 1st. It was, as Ms. Mackey mentioned, an hour-long meeting with a lot of discussion, so it was not taken lightly. They discussed possibilities for future use, the realities of restoring a church of this age and the size, as well as the financial commitment that would be needed from the owner or partners in restoring the church. And as Ms. Mackey mentioned, there's options to work with an owner to have steps in place to have deadlines to hit, to be able to show that movement in a longer time frame. And so the committee discussed that, you know, it's giving specific deadlines, specific requirements to let the owner or owner representative have an option to show more than just a good faith effort, but actually show results in gaining the architects, getting the property out of condemnation, moving forward. And so their ultimate motion was to approve the proposed demolition, but to allow the current owner time to reach out to Demolition Bureau, to work with Ms. Mackey and the others there to create a plan of action with deadlines to hopefully get it out of that condemnation. So their thought was, if that plan of action doesn't get matched, they said 30 days to start that initial conversation with the Demolition Bureau to create that plan of action. Then they would see the approval of the demolition.
All right, thank you. We'll then move on to Landmark staff recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tabernacle Baptist Church was designated as a Cleveland landmark in 2010. As we'll go through this timeline, a demolition site visit was completed on January 23rd, 2024, but landmark staff had the previous in July of 2023 with Councilman Polensek, the owners who were out there then. This church began as a mission Sunday school and was formed as the Collinwood Mission Chapel of Calvary Presbyterian Church. And the initial building was dedicated on December 2nd, 1906, with 125 members at a cost of $8,000, which today would be $250,000. It was incorporated in September of 1909 as Emmanuel Presbyterian Church. The new sanctuary was added in the English Gothic design and dedicated September 20th, 1925. And as a part of our research, we were able to find a copy of the original blueprints, which will assist in some of the costs that the owner has mentioned about creating from scratch. They don't have to go from scratch now. The church was remodeled in 1961. However, by 1993, membership had dwindled down to about 40, with only 20 as regular attendees. After some time, the Presbytery of the Western Reserve then sold the church to Tabernacle Baptist Church. And as mentioned, the 2010 designation, but by 2016, the church had been abandoned. And that's where you heard that timeline of complaints coming in, so that all kind of lines up as to when they skipped. And then we have our new owner as of 2022. These initial photos are of our site visit in July. So you can still see the vegetation and such that was shown. There's still some fencing up. We had some discussions about how to make the property look better in an interim manner. Some interiors of the 1906, when the new addition was put in, they split it to an upper level and a lower level. These are downstairs. These are upstairs. Fine wood details. The front window was split in what must have been a choir loft at some point. Then moving into the addition, lots of junk, but I think it is, a lot of this has been since cleaned out. And some will be similar to what we've seen already. This is down in the basement. There must have been a gymnasium and a stage area. And then here's some comparison photos from a couple of months ago. We were on our way to another site visit and I stopped by on the way. So they have cleaned it up quite a bit. And yes, the tarps failed, so it didn't protect it as much as they had hoped, but most of the vegetation has been removed, windows boarded where they could. And it does look a bit better. It's still in bad condition, and it is unfortunate that it has gone this long without intervention. Staff would recommend tabling this for 6 months to give time as the recommendations from the design review committee and to come up with a plan of action. And if the owner does not do any of that, then we would need them to follow the code, salvage plan, potential reuse of materials, etc. And we'll see what happens in 6 months. The commission does have the ability, as part of its code, to table the item for up to 6 months twice. So we can only delay it a year until action is needed. So tabling for 6 months would be appropriate at this time, as long as the applicants are agreeable. It's been 8 years, 9 years. I don't think another 6 months. Yes, it looks better, but we'll have to keep an eye on it as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brendes. We'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question, please, about the city's policy for boarding up structures. I believe it was stated that the building had been boarded up more than a dozen times. Just want to ask, at this point in time, is the first floor secure to prevent people from going into the structure and doing further damage and having the structure suffer more vandalism? And also with the ladder that was at the window, has that been removed to secure the building at some level?
So yes, we received yet another board up complaint at the end of January. So we did dispatch one of our boarding crews out, and the first floor was secured. And then what occurs is, until we have another complaint, we believe that the structure is secured. They try to do a very tight with star screws to go ahead and prevent just any average screwdriver drill to access the site. So we do try to enhance it. Again, just because of sheer size, number, or accessibility, we do not, as a general rule, go above the first floor. Now, with the ladder, I cannot speak to if the ladder was removed. However, we would not, it's not something that we own. We could not tell you to take a ladder out of the church. It would be, we would ask the owner to say, there's a ladder that is being used to access your site. Is it your ladder? Can you remove the ladder, take down the ladder? And I could speak to the owner, but we would not have the right to just take someone's property off of the site.
All right. Okay, thank you for that. I just wondered whose ladder it was. You know, if it had been put there by the owner or if the vandals had put it there and maybe it was giving other individuals access to the structure where they could do further damage. So thank you for that. And you also stated, or someone stated in the discussion, that you had worked with the Cleveland Restoration Society and also the county at some point. I'm just wondering if staff members have information on what the Cleveland Restoration Society said about this particular landmark and possibilities associated with raising funding to secure the building, and at the very least, if it is demolished at some point, to salvage the windows.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We did refer the owner to Cleveland Restoration Society and kind of tried to come up with other programs that we thought might be helpful. Didn't receive any feedback, so I'm not sure what response they may have gotten from CRS or the county.
Okay, and to the earlier point about possibly tabling any action on this particular case for at least another 6 months, would it be possible to submit a formal request to the Cleveland Restoration Society to ask them for something in writing to say what kind of conversation they had with the owners or other individuals, especially in Cuyahoga County, about this property? Who could initiate that? Is that a landmarks decision, or where would that have to come from?
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think if you in your motion or in a motion, specified that you wanted X, Y, and Z, outreach to Cleveland Restoration Society, whatever you'd like to see staff do, if you just sort of specify that in a motion, staff is certainly capable of handling it from there.
Okay, thank you.
I personally align with staff's recommendation. I do think that there has been some movement in trying to better the facility and feel 6 months is an adequate time to allow the owner to see if they can get response and coordinated with building department before we take action. So I support the recommendation to table this to allow contact with the owner and landmark staff to reach out to the Restoration Society, see if there are opportunities to help supplement the restoration. Other questions and comments from the commission?
Well, Madam Chair, yes, I would just like to echo you on that because, just recently we did a legislation on residential all vacant and foreclosed properties through building and housing. And I don't remember, I apologize, if we exempt landmark buildings per se, doing to these different proceedings on saving landmark buildings, but I do agree with tabling this due to what we have just passed through building and housing. I think it's worth looking into, but however, moving forward, this is something that's going to go through legislation soon, dealing with vacant and foreclosed buildings being fined for these reasons, and also eventually condemned to be demolished. But I believe this is worth looking into and saving just to see what the landlord, will do to the building.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
You're welcome.
Other questions and comments? So I do see Mr. Dreyer.
Yes, I don't think I can support tabling it. I feel like building and housing, the demo bureau has really gone above and beyond trying to work with the owner. And while it hasn't been a stone wall, I just don't know that 6 months is going to help much. So that's my perspective.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dreyer. Ms. Williams? Was your hand, did you have additional comments, Dr. Williams, or does your hand just
No,
remain
I
up by
should lower the hand. Thank you.
Okay, no problem at all.
And
Ms.
Madam-
Delosier? Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me just correct myself. It's residential first, not residential all. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Delosier? And then Ms. Anderson will come to you next, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question I have for staff. It was mentioned that that staff uncovered the original blueprint, and I was wondering, is this the first time that we're seeing these, or that these were known to be available? And have these been shared with the current owner yet?
Mr. Brendan?
Through the chair, yes and yes. They have been shared, and yes, we did not know that these existed prior, but as part of our standard research that we always ask to see if blueprints are available.
So they just have recently been shared?
Yes, they were only shared a couple, like last week.
Okay, so within the last week or two,
Yes.
you've been shared with ownership.
And that was part of the problem. Yeah, because of.
Sure.
So from that perspective, that could also help aid the current owner to develop a strategic plan for this property. Another question or comment that I have is, you know, it troubles me and it boggles my mind that the only course of action for an owner that allows a property to become, you know, in a state like this is demolition. I mean, are there other opportunities to either take, you know, have the city or someone else take ownership of this and resell it to someone who actually can make improvements to a property, a local landmark like this? Yeah, I have a hard time grappling with demolition as the only answer for something like this. So not really a question, but more of a comment.
So do you support tabling it to allow time for that research?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support tabling it with the hopes that the current owner would find a buyer with the vision and the wherewithal to turn this into, you know, maybe housing or, you know, just some sort of adaptive reuse. They use historic tax credits as part of its landmark status, you know, maybe low-income housing tax credits. And hopefully, if the owner realizes that he's going to have a huge demo lien on this property, it might give him some incentive to, you know, try to find another more well-heeled and again, visionary property owner. Those are my comments.
Okay. Hearing fairly consistent comments, would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, may I ask a question, please?
Oh, yes, please. Sorry, I couldn't see that your hand was up. Go ahead, Mr. Trout.
Yes, Madam Chair, and I think this question is to staff, if I may, through you. I do understand that we can table for up to 6 months twice. Is there any consideration to tabling it for a shorter period of time than 6 months? My only comment is that when things get delayed or postponed a long period of time, things don't necessarily tend to get done, if at all, until the latter part of that time. So maybe tabling it a shorter period of time, knowing that we still do have one more option of tabling it for a little bit period of time. If things were to progress, maybe that would get the parties to move in a little bit more of an expedited fashion if we were to review this again, perhaps 3 months from now, as opposed to 6. I just wanted to raise that as an issue.
Thank you, Mr. Trasick. I think Mr. Brenges has a response.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, we can, I was thinking about this and saying we can you can table it up to 6 months. Now, giving that maximum amount of time, if we are establishing that the agent owner has to meet certain deadlines and certain requirements within that 6 months, say after a first month, they have to come up with a plan. After 3 months, they have to do something. If they miss those benchmarks, then the Demolition Bureau could come back and saying, you know what, we gave them these benchmarks to meet, they didn't do it. We're now moving forward with the demolition, but then we still have the full 6 months to say that if he does meet those benchmarks, he has the maximum amount of time to do that. And I think that would be a compromise to put into that 6 month period.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Trosek?
It does. And again, it's, you know, my only concern, again, without some type of benchmarks, without some type of responsibility on the parties going forward, and obligations on the party going forward over the next 6 months, my only fear is that we come back 6 months from now and nothing has been done, and we're asked to extend this another 6 months. So I think that does answer my question, but I think maybe some type of benchmarks during this period of time would be appropriate.
Okay, I would agree. I think if the maximum is given, that is contingent on interim deadlines that would be set by the building department. All right, Dr. Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one other brief comment, because this isn't going to work as a motion. It's going to sound like editorializing. But I believe I heard that the stained glass windows date from 1924 and that the new sanctuary was dedicated in 1925. And so in light of the fact that we are now in this era of the centenary of what appears to me to be a very grand structure and historic structure, I think it would be a good idea to table this for 6 months, and then whatever we need to do to work with staff, if it's not a conflict of interest, or encourage the owners to do that, so that the Cleveland Restoration Society can do what it is so good at doing, especially when it comes to the restoration of sacred landmarks in our community, that we give them an opportunity to take a second look at the structure. Thank you.
Dr. Williams, is that a motion?
No, that was the editorializing in the form of a comment. When you call for a motion, maybe I'll try to do that too.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the start of the presentation, I recognize that Councilman Polensek has designated this demolition request as a priority. So given that we have to get the owner's approval to table, I wanted to know if the councilman's representative, Ms. Daly, would comment on whether the council person, Councilman Polensek, would support the delay in this demolition request for us to table it.
A point of clarification is that the Demolition Bureau, the City Demolition Bureau, is actually the applicant and acting on behalf of the owner because of the demolition request.
I understand.
Yeah, there are, through the chair, there are applicant, they would be contracting a demolition contractor who would then submit for a permit and everything, but when the city has to step in and utilize its police power because a property owner is not responsive or something like that, they essentially, proxy act in place of an owner.
So we would then ask the applicant, Ms. Mackey, do we have your permission to table this project?
I would prefer not a tabling. But I do respect the decision of the commission.
If
our experience is the longer you give a relatively absent owner to respond, their action is what it has been. And in this case, we've had numerous meetings and reach outs. I'm going to do it. We'll do something. And it just does not produce a result. And in the meantime, we must then continue to spend staff resources, funds to maintain some safety in the community. note that the longer that we do take to come to a decision, this all will be billed to him. So every board up is billed to him. He either pays or it goes as a lien and then it goes to collections. So outside of the necessary thousands of dollars of fees to pull in applications and architectural drawings and the repairs, he's going to continue to get assessed board up fees. If it comes down to working to remove those stained glass windows, that will be at his cost. The city could not engage in that. And then the demolition will be billed back to him with then steps of placing a lien and then going to collections. What we see oftentimes is the amount of work that we put into a site, the city does not ultimately get it back. This is a losing venture, I think, for everyone. Landmarks, the owner, and building and housing. So respectfully, we're walking a line of, we see it all the time. We can tell very quickly if an owner is interested and willing to work or does not want to, or just cannot. He may have interest, but he just cannot undertake those obstacles that is in front of him.
So
So respectfully, we are asking for the demolition, but again, I would defer to you.
Well, it's really your option as representing as the proxy ownership or applicant on this proposal or this case. Is that we have your permission to table it, and to then work with the owner over the next 6 months to set up deadlines to help remedy and move this project forward. If you do not, want to give us permission, that is your choice also. You can request us to vote. But I think we are at the point that we just would need your direction, and then we can continue forward.
Madam Chair, could I say something?
1 second, let's let the owner.
Then we could go ahead and table. We will continue our path on trying to work with the owner. Convey to him the seriousness and the steps that need to be taken, and then we could circle back and say.
Okay, thank you for that permission.
Sure.
Yes, Ms. Gray?
Oh, yes, I just want to say, I'm not, as a council person, and I know how all council feel about the deplorable buildings that are in all our neighborhoods. And due to this resident first that we all agreed to pass, I do understand Councilman Belinsky sentiments on he would prefer the building demoed. And so I'm not going against him, because I agree with these buildings in our community have massacred our community in order end up looking the way it looked. But due to it to be a landmark and it's still in that same condition, and I'm not sure if that was exempt from a 1039 ordinance that we just recently passed. But I'm just looking at it on a consideration of a landmark per se. But I will not go against council's Valencia, decision.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Brenges?
I'm just gonna add that staff will reach out to economic, because this is a church, it's more considered a commercial building. We could reach out to our economic development department as well to see what options they have about, because they have the ability with their industrial commercial land bank to be able to accept a building like this, unlike a residential structure that would not have that option.
Interesting, excellent.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
I have another, I guess, piggybacking on what Carl said. Are there other options the city has in lieu of demolition, such as eminent domain or something else that the city could take ownership and give it to another entity that can restore this?
Well, I think that's where, a little bit more time is the reason why, we are collectively, or I am collectively supporting a motion to come forward to table this, so that it gives some time to review that. If it's through economic development for commercial properties, if it's through Restoration Society, through low interest loans, other avenues to allow this to not go to demolition, but understand the importance and the focus on the community. That's where I think the timeline, of maximum 6 months with 1 month deadlines is appropriate, so that we can explore some of those opportunities. Mr. Strickland?
Madam Chair, with the applicant's approval, I would move to table this project with a stipulation that staff work with the applicant to come up with a timeline, setting milestones within the 6-month period for the owner to react, to come up with a plan within those stipulated timelines, so that we could try to promote some positive action during the table process.
Thank you for Mr. Strickland for the motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Trosik. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer, Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Abstain.
Mr. Lozier, Mr. Sandberg,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosik,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes by a vote of 8-1 with 1 abstention.
Okay. So Ms. Mackey, we look forward to you connecting with Landmark staff so that we can set those deadlines to make sure that we address everyone's concerns.
We noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll then move on to National Register of Historic Place nominations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully for some, happier news. The nomination of the Buckeye Commercial Historic District is scheduled to be reviewed by the Ohio Historic Site and Preservation Board, or OHSPAB, in March. I feel like they need a better acronym because that one doesn't do it for me. This nomination, which was authored by the preservation firm of Naylor and Wellman, was funded by Burton Bell Carr CDC through a partnership with the City of Cleveland through the use of a CLG, or Certified Local Government Grant. The Buckeye Commercial Historic District is comprised of 84 contributing and 6 non-contributing buildings dating within the period of significance of 1900 to 1974. The proposed district contains 2 buildings that are individually listed on the National Register. They're the Beaux-Arts 1927 Weitzer Building, which is also an individually designated Cleveland landmark, and the Neoclassical 1927 Moreland Theater Building. The district is composed of commercial buildings of 1 to 4 stories in height, with a few houses in there, many of which have been converted to commercial use. There are a wide variety of architectural styles from the early to mid 20th century that exist, with the most common styles and influences being Mediterranean, classical, colonial, revival, and modern. The commercial buildings are typically located right on the setback, while the residential buildings have a deeper setback, which allows some of them to accept 1-story commercial style additions, bringing the building out to the sidewalk to match the rest of the commercial district. A colonial revival Hungarian church and Bohemian Hall are religious and social buildings representative of the Hungarian community who settled on Buckeye Road in the early 20th century. The 6 non-contributing buildings in the district were built outside the period of significance. So the Buckeye Commercial Historic District is significant under criterion C in the areas of ethnic heritage, settlement, commerce, social history, and the civil rights movement, reflected along the Buckeye Road commercial corridor. The historic district is centered on the commercial spine of the Upper Buckeye neighborhood, representing ethnic white Hungarian in the early 20th century and the establishment of Little Budapest by 1930. The post-World War II and 1950s through the 70s change the neighborhood population with an influx of African American residents as part of the latter half of the Great Migration. The result was a clash in white ethnic and Black cultures with resistance to integration. Neighborhood organizations were formed, including the Buckeye Woodhill Woodland Area Council in 1952, replaced by the Buckeye Neighborhood Nationalities Civic Association in 1965, replaced by the Buckeye Woodland Catholic Community Council in 1971, and then finally the Buckeye Woodland Community Congress in 1974 to address growing urban problems. The district represents the evolution and impact of community organizing and activism through the development of the Buckeye Woodland Community Congress, which was established by the Diocese of Cleveland as an effort to bring together the ethnically diverse and divided ethnic residents that comprise the Buckeye and Woodland neighborhoods. The Buckeye Woodland Community Congress was one of the first of its kind in the country. Its purpose was to promote racial harmony and generate power for underserved and impoverished communities. The period of significance begins in 1900 with the construction of the first building in the historic district and ends in 1974 with the establishment of the Buckeye Woodland Community Congress in a renewed response to efforts to improve race relations throughout the community and through community organization. It is the opinion of Landmark staff that the Buckeye Commercial Historic District is significant under Criterion C in the areas of ethnic heritage, settlement, and commerce, and therefore eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. We ask the Commission support this nomination with a motion to support its advancement to the Ohio Historic Site Preservation Advisory Board. It's my hope that once this district is listed in the National Register, we can work to protect it locally by designating as a Cleveland Landmarks Historic District. But I feel like this is a great first step, and a lot of great research has been done on this. So.
Excellent. Thank you for that very detailed summary. Very interesting. Do we have any staff comments or councilperson comments?
Sure. Kim Scott, City Planning. I'm the neighborhood planner for this particular area, and I really wanted to just listen to get a better understanding of the geography that was assigned to me about 9 months ago. So it's all new, but I think that this designation really speaks to the contribution that this area lends to the neighborhood as well as the city of Cleveland. And so I'm just happy to see the work that's been done by staff to document this, and I highly support the action today. Thank you.
Scott. Councilman Gray?
Yes, I also agree with, I'm gonna echo Ms. Scott. I live in the area, I've been there for over 35 years myself, and I've seen, when I moved in 1989, I had seen what it looked like then, and it was very well structured community, but unfortunately we went into another direction. But now we can move forward in a better direction of growth and development, and with the support of the commission board, I think that I believe the neighborhood will be much appreciative if we can be nominated for this historical preservation of this community to bring it back to life, to give it some, to give it some wealth and some growth so we can be viable again.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilwoman Gray.
Okay.
We'll then open up the floor to the commission for any questions or comments. I support this nomination. I think it's a wonderful addition to the overall mix of our districts, or would be, or will be, I should say. I just also, have to state, like we said in the past, is how the impact of 88 additional buildings on Landmark staff, because it does add an additional load. But I am in support of this nomination. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a proud alumna of Harvey Rice Elementary School, I remember some of those racial and ethnic tensions. And I appreciate the efforts, especially on the part of the Diocese of Cleveland and folks at the Harvey Rice Branch Library, the track garden, and all the other wonderful things that we had near that intersection of East 116th and Buckeye to make that a livable community. And I think anything that we can do at this point in the city's history to call attention to the fact that people have been trying for a while to deal with some of those issues in a very positive way would be beneficial, certainly to the residents and business owners in that community and the students who still attend Harvey Rice Elementary School and the new Harvey Rice branch of the Cleveland Public Library. It would encourage them. And I also think that it would, as Councilwoman Gray has said, attract some new investments in the community as well. So I think it's a good idea for us to move forward with this designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Mr. Lozier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am also in support. I think this is, as has been already mentioned, I think this is another really great opportunity for this area of the city to have this landmark designation. I do have one question. I don't know if there's anyone that would be able to necessarily answer this, but it's really just about the question about the boundary of the proposed district. And I guess I'm looking at the one property at the corner of 116th and Buckeye, and trying to understand, I guess, why that's not included in the overall district, as it seems like it's really it holds that corner. I'm looking at a Google Earth view, and it looks like it's a Rally's fast food restaurant. So I can understand maybe why it's not necessarily considered historic, or something that would go in at a later date might not be. But there are other fast food restaurants along this block that are included in the district. So it's, I guess, more of a clarification or just understanding of why that may not be part of the district.
Staff have one to respond?
Yes, through the chair to Mr. Lozier. Yeah, I mean, the lower, I guess the southern portion of Buckeye extends to the western corner of East 112th. The northern boundary stops, as Mr. Lozier said, at East 116th Street. I believe the parcel, just to the east of the fast food restaurant or Rally's, whatever it is, that parcel extends over to 116th, so you have that kind of L-shaped. Otherwise, I think that would have, been cut off as well, and the proposed district would have ended mid-block. It's not uncommon if something doesn't fit the theme or would be non-contributing anyway and happens to be on a border, they just sort of leave it out of a district instead of including it but calling it non-contributing. So I think essentially, I think it's just the property lines that make it a weird boundary, but the intent was essentially to stop it with that last historic district that's actually on East 117th, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think what Mr. Lozier is saying is that it would, and I would agree, that property being part of the boundary, but designated as it's a building that's non-contributing, so that in future redevelopment, it would be under the control and purview of the landmarks. Or actually, it's not a Cleveland landmark, so we'd have that opportunity in the future if this was designated as a Cleveland landmark to potentially add that.
I mean, I think in the future, if we want to pursue landmarking this as a historic district, we could certainly consider that and potentially incorporate that into our district. It is nice when the National Register and local landmark boundaries align. I don't know if there's more to why the consultants, Naylor and Wellman did not include that. I mean, I could look into that and inquire, or, certainly pass that comment on to OSHPAB if you guys feel, strongly that you kind of want some clarification or just like to understand better why it was not included.
Mr. Brunches?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, relaying from Director Wong, her support for this, that's lots of planning and community involvement has taken place and that there will be in the future as well.
Excellent. Mr. Lozier, did that answer your question?
It did, yes, thank you.
Yes, I was gonna say. Okay, other questions and comments from the commission?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I fully support the nomination for the National Register. I guess we danced around it, but is the city interested in creating a local landmark for this district as well?
Landmark staff is, I don't, we'd have to, have conversations with the council members whose area this I guess are involved with that, one of whom is here. And then as Chairwoman Trapp mentioned, adding a district does have implications on staff and staff timing. So we always kind of have to consider that when looking at potentially adding a district. But I mean, it's my hope to keep moving forward, but I don't know if the city as a whole shares that vision.
I can say that this was looked at many years ago, I think back in the 80s, not only as a commercial, but also part of the residential around it as well. So we have a file dating back. So there has been interest, it just never progressed to a point. But I think going the National Register let's see how that goes first and then where we're at after that.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Sandberg?
Yes.
Any additional questions?
Nope, I'm in full support.
Okay. Dr. Williams? Oh, there you go. I see your hand went up. Any additional questions or comments, or was somebody like and I always mess this up, is it a motion to support the advancement of the project to the board? Can I say the board?
What's its full name? Which
No.
board? Yeah, that's how I would phrase it, yes.
Okay.
And I can fill in the full name of the board.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion, Councilwoman Gordon.
All right, thank you. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Sandberg. So we have a motion to support the advancement of the project to the
Ohio Historic Site Preservation Advisory Board.
excellent. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musson, please call.
Okay. Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lozier? Mr. Sandberg?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trapp?
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
excellent. All right, that concludes our historic place nomination. We'll move on to meeting minutes. There were 2 meeting minutes that were circulated. Does anyone have any questions or comments, or would someone like to put forward a motion to approve? Any questions or comments, or someone like to put forward a motion?
This is Alan. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes, July 8th, 2021 and January 11th, 2024.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Any further discussion? Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right. Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lozier? Mr. Sandberg?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trapp?
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. Administrative reports?
Not anything huge today. Just wanted to thank everyone, especially those who showed up in person and made the effort to get down here. Also wanted to mention that we're working on finalizing the proposed design review advisory committee regions. I'll be emailing those out in the next few days with the hopes that we can have a discussion about those geographies at our next meeting. So keep an eye on your emails for that.
All right, thank you. Any site visits?
None scheduled.
There might be some.
Yeah, some might pop up, but
Okay.
none that we have right now.
Okay, perfect.
And then I just have one thing, I just discovered this morning, and we just missed one a couple days ago, but National Park Service is hosting a seminar on Thursday, the 22nd, webinar, from 2 to 3:30 on the use of substitute materials on historic building exteriors, which I think would be interesting for everybody to go. I will send the link out to that, so.
Excellent. Thank you. That'd be
Thanks,
great.
Carl.
Excellent. All right, well then that concludes our administrative reports, and we will adjourn and see everyone at our next meeting at February 22nd. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wrote out the date.